Dennis, who, if it wasn't for your vision, we would not be here today. So thank you so much. We have entertainer, pioneer, activist, legendary Doug E. Fresh. And another legend who doesn't need an introduction because he also kept us together during the pandemic, Mr. D. Nice.
That's all y'all got for these two incredible gentlemen? Come on. All right. So, Alfonso been plotting against me all day, and he finally got me up here. But I will say, it is an absolute honor to be up here because these two gentlemen have transformed not just a music genre, and I shouldn't say transform, in a lot of ways helped to create and elevate it, to now having spent so much of their energy keeping us going through the pandemic. I've got a few questions, guys. So one of them is, we're at the Global Black Economic Forum. We've seen the growth and development of hip hop over the past 50 years. Both of you, in your own and unique ways, has had an extraordinary amount of input in that happening and drive in that happening. How has hip hop transformed the globe?
You want to start, Doug? So many ways for someone like myself who grew up in the inner city, grew up extremely poor, and the one thing that kept me going early on was hip hop music, which is why Doug is still one of my closest friends, because Doug was always someone that I admired, growing up, not that we're that far apart in age, but he was actually on the scene doing music way before I was involved. Hip hop just kept me focused and created so many entrepreneurs, because we had pretty much had to start this out of nothing. A lot of the music was made in homes. Our very first record was made in someone's apartment on like a 4-track mix board, and it ended up becoming something global. And so it's always been a source of inspiration.
One of the things is, first of all, when I'm in here, I'm just look at where hip hop got us. Look at where hip hop got us. Look at where those duffel bags got you.
That is hip hop, right?
He's hip hop to the bone. And to be honest with you, all of y'all are hip hop in here. Who's hip hop in here? Make some noise. It has affected our lives directly, indirectly, all over. One time, I was in Italy and I seen a German rap group performing Rapper's Delight in German in Italy.
Wow.
That's
Can't
global.
make this up.
That's global.
Can't make it up. So for me, I look at hip hop as something that the Creator gave us to give us power, economic power, giving us a voice, giving us the ability to express ourselves in many ways. How many of y'all from New York City? Anybody in here? How many of y'all from the United States? Is anybody in here? Because there's New York City and then there's the United States. So, but nevertheless, in hip hop, you got 5 elements. You got the DJ, D Nice. Make some noise for D Nice. Number 2, you have the MC, which is the master of ceremony.
Make some noise for Dougie Fresh.
I appreciate that. And an MC is different than a rapper. A rapper raps. An MC is the master of ceremony. Big difference. I'll show y'all that tomorrow night. But right now, I'm gonna stay focused. Number 3 is graffiti. How many of y'all seen the movie Beat Street, Breaking, Crush Groove. How many of y'all grew up seeing these movies? You know, you look at Netflix now, you see a lot of them. Number 4 is the break dancer, Electric Boogie. Fellas, how many of y'all used to break dance in here? Anybody used to break dance? And if you tried to break dance now, you will break. Don't do that. And number 5 is the beatbox, which is the 5th element, which I created, and I created that 5th element. Now, Rich, I gotta tell you, the reason why this happened and the reason why I'm giving y'all all 5 elements, which D-Nice know, is because it's the foundation of hip hop. So when we go around the world, we see one of these 5 elements being expressed by a different group, whether it's Japan, whether we were just in Davos at the economic summit, but it wasn't as good as this summit. Of course not. So we were there, we seen these expressions of all of these things in hip hop, and it's amazing to see how we took something from nothing and turned it into something. So you have this with you and you have a clear understanding of it. These things that we are doing now are just because of the circumstances, and we made it work, and that's what black people do.
Yes.
Black people make things work under circumstances.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yes. So, you know, I've been over the past, I think this has always been the case. Like, I think, you know, black people are the greatest entrepreneurs on the planet. Just look at what we have to do just to survive every day, right? And I think as rappers, hip hoppers, musicians, whatever the title of the day is, we didn't always get to participate in the economics of the culture that we were creating, right? You guys have over decades, not just gone through the phase of where your future was determined by somebody else. You've been in the game, transformed the game to the place now where you are driving your own economics. You are building your own businesses, and the young cats coming behind get to see that, right? What has been the most liberating part of that for you guys?
The most liberating part for me has been, you know, when I started in the music industry, I used to hear no a lot, you know, and by the time I was 22 years old, I was considered old school. You know, once the people stopped clapping, it was over. It's like, well, you know, what am I gonna do? You know, to me, hip hop didn't just begin when I was like 15. It started beyond that, and it shouldn't end when I was 22. You know, so I had to find other ways to be creative. And I did so by starting a creative services agency, which, you know, I built websites for some of the big companies out there, made every record company. That's how I was able to get by. I was hip hop in another way, you know, self-taught programmer, and that helped me just kind of get through everything. And even till to this day, this is where my inspiration came from those days. That's why doing an Instagram live or marketing that way was so easy for me. It was because it's just who I am. You know, when you come from hip hop and start with nothing, you figure out ways to make everything happen.
Yeah, hip hop is kind of like, you know, the way it was for me. I had a different beginning. I've been doing this. I hate to tell people how long I've been doing it. I've been doing this since 1981.
Wow.
81 consistently. I had to get my work given to me in my last year of high school because my career took off, and the person that played a role in helping me in my career is the great Mr. Harry Belafonte. He seen something in me, and he took the time to help me and develop and show me different things about how we can use our voice for more than just the music, but at the same time, if we're gonna show our talent, let's show the best of ourselves. So whenever I do something, I'm always doing it with him or my mother or Paul Robeson, a lot of these great people who I think laid out a foundation of what we really need to look at and follow, because they took their platforms to another level. So when I look at what you're doing, brother, and I mean this sincerely, I respect it so much, and that's why I ride with you like I do, because you're going beyond just, you can make money, but what are you doing with it? How are you using this to help your people? How are you changing the conditions of your environment and all the things you say you don't like? How can we send more kids to HBCUs? How can we inspire more kids who grew up in the hood who want to make it and they just made a wrong little mistake and they get hit with a crazy sentence, and you know that the sentence don't justify the action that happened? So I come from that kind of upbringing, where something happened in the neighborhood, you wish your mama found out than the neighbor, because the neighbor's going to snitch on you, number one, or might get a little beating, a little pop, because you know how you supposed to be acting in the neighborhood. I come from that old school West Indian family upbringing. That's what I come from. So in going home and stuff like that, I learned a lot from when I walked home from school, and I would see a lot of the different businesses. I would see a lot of the black entrepreneurs. They would inspire me. I would see a guy who owns a brownstone in Harlem. I say, how did he do that? I say, man, I wish I could have my own brownstone. So I've seen examples. So when I'm doing what I'm doing now, I try to set example to the younger hip hop artists, show them how to carry themselves, how to treat each other, don't get caught up in a lot of the things that they get caught up in. And I was also very fortunate to own my own masters and my publishing at a very young age.
Yes.
But you know, Rich, the reason why it happened is because I put my own money up to make my records, because a lot of people, as a lot of times, they don't believe in us. So we have to believe in ourselves. So I put the money up, I believed in myself, I took the record to a record label, I said, I'll cut you in, but I paid for this, and I said, we can break it off if you want. He said, yeah, he wanted to do it. So I was the first hip hop artist ever to own his masters in 1985.
So that's really an interesting angle that we're starting to see people get more and more vocal about and become more and more aware of. But you doing this since '85, dude. So
all the masters.
All of it.
Either you own the master or the master owns you.
One of the two. Yeah. And I think that catching on, the younger folks attaching to that now and understanding the economics behind the business. I think when we were all coming up, whatever businesses we were in, we were just happy that somebody gave us an opportunity to do the thing that we love to do versus the opportunity to actually benefit long-term from it. And I've known both of you for a long time. I've seen how you move. And one of the things that I think is your greatest common trait is your students. You're always watching, you're always learning, you're always taking that learning and building something out of it, right? We're in the room with CEOs, business leaders, right? You've been learning by watching them. What should they be learning from watching you?
Great question.
Man, that is definitely a great question. What I've learned in business, I've been doing this for a long time, not quite as long as Dougie. We started in 1986, so you got a good 5 years on us. We unfortunately didn't own our masters. We had to we had no money to fund any of this. I never wanted to be in that predicament ever again. When the record company pretty much dropped me in like 92, I always wanted to find ways to be able to not just sustain a lifestyle, but to also be able to provide opportunity for other people like me, because I was extremely young doing this. And here we are, decades later. I've done well in not just based on Club Quarantine. Club Quarantine was great. CQ was beautiful. It was more about community. Everything was community driven.
Speaking of which, we got some Club Quarantine coming up this weekend, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah, let's let them know.
This weekend, which is actually another thing. I didn't ask to be on the Essence main stage. I went to you guys and said, hey, I actually want to produce my own shows in partnership with you. And because I have my own vision. And my vision is not to just stand alone, it's also to be partners with people like yourself and people like Dougie. And the moment that I said that, the doors just opened. You guys came we sat down, we had this deal. And now after Essence Festival, we got Club Quarantine Live going on every night at the Fillmore, which is beautiful to be able to do that with you. So I thank you for that.
No, thank you, brother. Thank you. Because I think that right in there embodies what the Global Black Economic Forum is about.
Yes.
And it's finding ways for us to actually do business together, to build together, to invest together, to grow together, and to leverage each other's resources in order to do that, right? And I think the more that we can create those types of opportunities, the more successful those opportunities can become, the greater scale we can build together, and the more we can have an economic community that can actually collectively invest back into our communities. And so thank you for the partnership. Thank you. And Doug, I was saying, what can they learn from you?
Well, to me, I think that when you look at hip hop, and anybody here that's the different opinion leaders, or if you are a president of a company or anything that's going on, the one thing that I think that we should learn from each other is that, first of all, the thing that you said, which is we're students. So as much as people know I've been doing this a long time, or some people say you're a teacher, all the legend and stuff, I'm a student first in everything. So I'm always trying to learn more. Technology has changed things. People have changed along the way. So there's so much changes that happen. So I feel the one thing that we can offer anybody in this room as hip hop artists, hip hop pioneers, is that you have to look at what we created and how it turned into a multi-billion-dollar business, and how much influence we have over so many different generations of people, and how we can take this same resource and apply it to something that you have and help expand or impact a particular area that you're trying to reach. We have creative ways of doing things that are unorthodox, unusual. We come up with ways to make it happen. There's one way to describe hip hop, and I say this poem everywhere I go because I want people to really understand the full depth of what hip hop represents. It goes like this. It says, we the willing, led by the unknowing, are doing the impossible for the ungrateful. We have done so much for so long with so little that we are now qualified to do anything with nothing. Now that poem, I'm telling you, defines hip hop in every aspect, because it tells you that under all circumstances, we're gonna make it work. So in this room, no matter what you have, no matter what you're doing, if you're trying to hit any generation, any angle, hip hop at this particular time is that source that can get you there. It's the only genre of music that have been going strong for 50 years. Solid, not a break. 50 years and still going. And every other form of music had to tap into it in order for it to survive. So you have to look at this and say, this hip hop thing is real. You understand?
It is.
And you know what, Rich? The craziest thing about it, and D know this too. There's no possible way that I thought that I would be having this conversation from the time that I started it till now, and we are celebrating 50 years of hip hop. It's possible, right?
Yeah. Well, they're flagging me for time, but I've got 2 more questions that I want to get to. I know a guy, so I think I can go over.
You definitely do.
One of them is, what does the next 50 years look like?
No. I mean, because I couldn't predict the first 50 years, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't know what it looks like, you know? I mean, I see the culture constantly growing. It's still evolving. You know, we're in, my brother here, Kanan, showed me something where hip hop represents 70% of what goes on in advertising all over the world. 70%. In some way, some form, hip hop is involved in it. We would have never imagined that 20 years ago. You know, so I can't personally predict it. What do you think, Doug?
I was waiting for you to ask me that question. I know where this thing is getting ready to go. Now, I told people that the new hip hop artist that would pop off in hip hop years ago was gonna come from another country, and Drake popped. And I knew that Drake would pop because the conversation in hip hop started to become constantly the same. And in the beginning of hip hop, the conversation was never the same because the creation was brand new. So everybody was trying to expand on the creation. So now we're at a point now in hip hop where, to me, for it to survive for the next 50 years, there has to be some different principles put in place. Number one, I think that the health of the hip hop artists have to be taken into deep consideration. I think that the lifestyle, from the drugs, the pills, the different things that they're doing, the law, the dietary law, I think that the longevity of some hip hop artists is going to be cut short because of not making the changes. And if the changes are not made, and if the discipline is not applied, you know what the end results will be. So I think that we have to go forward with promoting more health conscious things, talk about like supporting this, what you got going on right now. Because I think that even with a lot of the hip hop artists I did a show the other day where it was 50 artists back to back, never been done in hip hop. I did it in Atlantic City, like 50 artists on one show. And I was seeing different generations, from the Fearless 4, Treacherous 3, you know, Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5. And I looked at them and I was saying that we have to do our best to create some kind of teaching so that we can learn more about how we can own our masters, own our publishing. There's other ways for you to make money. You can make music on the different basketball games and the football games when they're cutting into these things. You hear all of that music. So there's so much more creativity that you have in you, but when you can't make the change, when you're not healthy, when you're sin, sometimes you get depressed and you do things when you're depressed. You might drink too much, eat too much, smoke too much. So I think we need to communicate and create panels like this, not just here at Essence, but take these into different cities, try to communicate to these different pioneer hip hop artists, align them with some of the new hip hop artists, because to me, D-Nice talking to Slim Thug is gonna have impact. Dougie talking to Rick Ross may make Rick Ross think twice about something because he respects me. So I just think that we need to use our resources, and we need to be more what I call loving and caring to each other, and not this separatism. I think that hip hop can only survive if the first generation of hip hop and the new generation combine. If they stay apart, hip hop will start to die because it can't survive on its own with the new generation. They don't have enough tools. And the older generation don't have enough power. You understand what I'm saying? Did I get too deep? All right, okay.
Well, so one last question. We're talking about global black economics. We're talking about how we connect our economics across the black diaspora, all right? We've seen the incredible rise, if you will, of Afrobeat, which I think is rooted in hip hop. But I think hip hop is rooted in African culture. Right? So we're coming full circle and connecting with each other. How do we sustain that? How do we elevate that? How do we make sure that we have the tools, as you said, to keep the connection going and not be bifurcated as is so often done when we create something and then we lose it? How do we do that?
You know, Rich is coming with these great questions, man. In terms of like on the music side with Afrobeat or just African music, period, it's what we've all loved anyway. That's pretty much what made us different when it came to like even our music production back then and to now, is that we've always incorporated African rhythms into our music, whether it's African rhythms or, you know, Jamaican culture, which is, you know, that's where hip hop began, is, you know, from Jamaican culture, which is still African music. It's always been an element, you know, and it's always been the driving force behind that music and that feeling. So, and I love that the world is starting to finally embrace, well, not even finally, or starting to. We've been embracing this culture for a long time. It's just now the spotlight is on it, and we need to keep supporting it.
Well, I'll tell you this real quick, because I know this is your last question.
Well, maybe.
Right. See how it is when you are the owner of something? I like that position. I tell people, how many of y'all are you're renting your apartment or you own your house? Who owns your house? Anybody owns your house? How many of y'all renting? You're renting. Okay, so here's a little sidebar before I answer this last question. In life, there's only two positions you can play, right? When you deal around, you either are the tenant or the landlord. No other position. And the landlord is the lord of the land, right? So you decide which one you want to be. Right now, I am sitting with the landlord. See, the tenant don't have the same control that the landlord do. You understand what I'm saying? I'm just pointing that out, just for a little sidebar. Now, back to the point about Africa. I went to Africa in 1987. I was the first hip-hop artist to ever go to Africa. I wanted to go to Africa bad. It was like one of these things on my list. Have anybody here been to Africa? If you have not, you must go to Africa. Do not believe what you have seen on TV and the mind game that they have been using to manipulate you, to make you hate yourself. Africa is a paradise. Africa is a well of resources and power and people who want to connect with us and do things with us, but only because someone have tricked us mentally, we don't connect like we should. So I went to Africa in 87. I went to Senegal. Then I went to Gambia. Then after that, I went to Sierra Leone, Freetown. Then I went to South Africa, and then we went to Ghana. Unbelievable. Now, the point I'm saying, and why I'm bringing this up, is that I think that we need to embrace who we really are. We need to stop being so fearful of who we really are. And I think mentally, that's one of the things that have occurred. And I think that things are going backwards, but they're going forwards because Afrobeat is the foundation of all of these things. Now, Afrobeat took the place, and you tell me if you see it the same way, of reggae music. Reggae and dancehall changed to Afrobeat. And now reggae was really popular, but now Afrobeat is the foundation of what everybody's dancing to around the world. So to me, I think that once again, we need to be more in communication with each other to make impact. We can't sit just in the US. You gotta go over there and touch the ground. You gotta go and taste the food. You gotta go and get into the dances. You gotta go and feel the sun. You know, you gotta take this life that you got and see your beautiful brothers and sisters over in Africa, because this right here, global means universal. I don't know if you know, but the derivation for black means to shine. That's the root of the word black. Economic, the root of it is having a production, a product to exchange. We have a lot of product here. We got so many creative people in this room that if you connect with one of your brothers and sisters from Africa, you'll be shocked at how much money you can make. Not money only, but how many people you can employ. Then you're talking about forum. Forum is just a gathering of people. And that's what we're doing right now. So I once again gotta say, I commend you, I commend Essence, because this is the kind of forum that we gotta have to make impact on the world, because we have the power. We're just afraid to use it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the landlord got to pay the bill at some point. So we gonna go now. But Dougie, D, thank you. Thank you for